Hello and welcome to Alfresco Tech Talk Live. This is episode 94, I believe it is. So we're getting close on episode 100 episodes in total. Today is February 17th, and we have a couple of announcements before we get started. Today I'm joined with Dave Draper and Martin Doyle. They are the Aikau team from Alfresco, and they'll be giving us a lot of updates on what's new and whatnot, and we'll get to a proper introduction just shortly. The first announcement is that we have Alfresco 5.1 Community Edition GA release. It's going out a bit later today or tomorrow. I'm not entirely sure about the timing, but watch out for an announcement. It should be out today or tomorrow, so be sure to check it out, report any bugs you find, if any. It's a really solid release. We've done a huge amount of testing in QA, so we're really proud of that release. A ton of new features, which you've seen in the previous episode of Tech Talk Live, like the new virtual folders. Sorry, that's smart folders now. And just a bunch of cool stuff, so be sure to check it out. The next event we have coming up is, I guess, Tech Talk Live in March. We have on the 9th of March, we'll have the DevOps team, or rather we'll have Enzo and Mauricio from the DevOps team discussing the Alfresco SPK, which is the software provisioning kit. I'm really excited to present that to the broader community. And we're also, on top of that, to give the DevOps team some more air cover, I'm talking to Richard about doing more office hours. So we're going to pick up office hours and do them more regularly now. And I'm meeting with Richard next week to make sure that we get a good schedule up and running for office hours. So yes, I think that is just about it. I should also mention that Beacon is. The registrations is live, so be sure to register and sign up for the event. I think we still have a few weeks before the early bird rate is going off, so be sure to check out Beacon's website, and I hope to see all of you there. I also know that we have usually we follow RC for questions and comments, and I just got a Skype message from one of our community members that we seems to have a bit of a lag. Apparently, I'm not online on RSC, but I'll fix that while we do introductions. So I think that concludes the announcement for today. So I'll hand the floor over to Dave and Martin.
Okay, so I think chances are people watching this will probably know me. My name's Dave Draper. I've been with Alfresco for about 5 years now, working in the UI team, and now the Aikau team. I'll explain in a little bit about how the teams are structured now in the engineering organization around UI. But yeah, that's really it. I'm sure like I said, most people will probably know me now. There's two people in the Aikau team, myself and Martin, who I will hand over to.
Hi, I'm Martin Doyle. I've been with Alfresco about a year now, and been working the whole time with Dave and the Aikau team. Background is front-end engineer, so JavaScript, HTML, CSS, and I'm working with Dave on just basically improving the Aikau library.
Okay, thanks, Martin. So the plan today is, I know when we've done these sort of sessions before, is that it's been I've put together a PowerPoint slide deck, but today we're going to try something a little bit different. We're going to try it to be a bit more free-flowing and free-form. So what I've got is I've got a whole bunch of content that I'd like to cover, and Martin and all are going to chip in as they see fit, really, whenever because they're both obviously Martin, but also Earl is very knowledgeable about Aikau as well, and asking any questions and things like that, and hopefully IRC lag will catch up, and we'll be able to get some questions in as well. So hopefully the lag won't be too bad, but if there are questions, then we'll try and circle around to them as we go. So I'm just going to jump to a screen share, and what we'll do is, so I'll show you how, basically this is kind of the agenda of stuff we're going to be talking through. But the first thing I wanted to talk a little bit about was the team processes. So one thing that I don't think is necessarily obvious to people is that how open Aikau is as a project. So you'll notice this is the issues at alfresco.com, and you'll notice that I'm not signed in at all. So I just want to show you the sort of kind of information that you can see in terms of what we're doing in Aikau. So this is our backlog. Anyone can come in and see the entire backlog. It's quite large. We tend to have a few sprints planned in advance, or at least certainly capturing the things that are going to be important, and we tend to sort of try and identify where the issues are coming from. So a couple of interesting things here. You'll see we've got a community epic and a customer epic and a few other projects, some of which you might recognize, like RM. We're doing a lot of work on the uploader, which we're going to be talking about in a moment. Also things on unit testing. So you can see the backlog of things we want to work on. I would say I hadn't realized that it's not actually possible to create Jira tickets in the AKU or our Aikau project. But what you can do is you can raise them against the Alfresco project, the ALF project, as you normally would, and if you tag them with the right component, which is the share web scripts or customizations or the Aikau tag, then they'll come to me anyway, and what we'll do is we'll pull them into the Aikau project, and you'll be able to comment on them and update them from there. Or the alternative thing you can do is you can go to GitHub. This is the Aikau GitHub page if you're not familiar with it, and you can raise issues in here. As you can see, we've had a few issues come in. This is and we've got one that's still open, that's been open for a while, but I haven't really been able to focus on it. But what we tend to do is it's quite chatty. I'm happy to sort of answer questions in there, or bugs will get raised as a result. I'll try and find a good example that might be done. So here's an example, something that came in from the community. Someone had raised an issue. We raised an equivalent Aikau ticket, and then you can then sort of follow the progress, and then it got resolved in a particular release. The other thing about Aikau, again, that's quite unique within Alfresco, is that we do weekly sprints, and we have weekly releases. So you can see at the moment we've just finished 1.0.55, and we're in the process of developing 1.56, which will be released next Tuesday. And we're using something called the Git flow process. So what we have is we have a main branch, which is master, which is where basically effectively is the last release, and then we have a develop branch, which is what we work from. So if I switch over to, you can kind of see what we have going on here, is that everything we have in the develop branch, we have particular features. We work in all bugs and features on a branch from develop, and when they're finished, we do code reviews, and they get merged back into the develop stream. At the end of the sprint, we take a branch from develop, which will have all the features and bug fixes in. We do a release from that, and then when that's finished, that all goes back down to master. So it's quite a solid process. Another thing, I know I've mentioned this before, but I just want to sort of reiterate some of these things, is that we do all of our code is reviewed, so neither Martin nor I can push our own code. So if I do a fix, so let's find some really simple stuff. So there was a typo. I'll raise, even for something as simple as this, I'll raise a pull request. It'll be linked to the Jira ticket. Martin will then review it, add any comments as necessary. We'll go back, make any changes, and only then will the code get reviewed. Again, you can see that I'm not signed in here. All of this is completely public for anyone to access that wants to. Anything you want to add, Martin, on process at all?
No, I think that covers it.
Okay.
So how would that tie in with if the community wanted to contribute back? Would they have to conform to the same Git flow style things, or just do a branch and a pull request, or what would you guys prefer? What is the ideal contribution, contribution?
So the ideal code contribution, and we have had some pull requests that have come in, which we're quite pleased about. So the ideal thing, if you make a pull request, ideally it should go to the develop branch rather than master. We've had that mistake a couple of times now, but if you want to make a contribution, if you go to, this is the home page, if you go down to the bottom, there's this a link to contribution acceptance criteria, and this describes everything that and examples of how you should be updating your code. The main thing really comes down to writing the unit tests. I'm going to be talking a lot about unit tests in a moment, but basically the important thing, and this is one of the issues that it's kind of important, that because we because we test. Because we release so frequently, need to be very good on test, and Martin's going to be talking a lot more about test shortly. So it's really important that we get tests to back up features and bug fixes. So a lot of the times now we actually spend more time on writing the tests to prove that a bug is fixed than to actually fix the bug in the first place. And the value of this, if you're trying to contribute a feature, which we are very happy to receive, is that it sort of guarantees it protects your feature from being changed, because you're writing the test to make sure that's correct. So we would like to see more contributions, and certainly we'd like to see tests coming in as well. And it's like I said, it's pretty open, really. So that ideally we want to see more contributions from the community, and I think that we've sort of stressed this in IRC that, unlike the core Alfresco SVN project, this approach with GitHub and the reviews and the unit tests that we have makes it that much easier to contribute. So if you've tried to contribute to Alfresco before and you have found your code hasn't made it, you'd hopefully find this is a much easier way of contributing. But yeah, in terms of the other thing I was going to mention briefly, in terms of we do the weekly releases, but what we typically do, just so people understand the process, is that service packs of Alfresco will be going out on a version of Aikau, and then once they go into QA, then we will hotfix that particular release. So for most things, we're just doing another release, but say a version of Alfresco, it's like the service pack, for example. So 501 went out with 1.0.8.2 because we had to do 2 hotfixes for it, even though we were further down with releases. Similarly, 502 went out with 1025.3 or 4, I think, and 5.1 went out with 1036.5, I think. So we are hotfixing. So even though we're very confident in our unit testing, when it comes into the QA process, we will hotfix any, and they do typically tend to be quite minor fixes off that branch to minimise the risk of any additional changes. So that's just a bit on the process that I wanted to cover. So hopefully that makes sense. Let me just check to see some of the other things that. Okay, so that covered most of this. Oh yeah, and as I said, test driven is one of the key things. Moving on to some of the new stuff. I'm assuming there's no questions that have come in at all on that in that period.
Not yet, no.
Okay, cool. So I want to get on to talk about some of the new things that we want to be working on, or we have been working on. So one of the latest things we've been working on, if I can find it, is something called the Aikau sandpit. So the Aikau sandpit is tied into our release process. And it's also tied into GitHub as well. So if you go to GitHub, you'll see there is an Aikau sandpit application, and it has its own README file, and this describes how you can contribute example pages. And this was something that got raised as a sort of nice to have. It's still not as full as we'd like it to be, but what we're trying to do now, as part of our agile definition of done, each time we finish a new widget, we'll add an example of it into the sandpit, and also we're trying to retroactively go back and add new widgets. So it isn't at all representative of the number of widgets we have. It's just really a statement of time. It's only been live for a few weeks now, but the idea is that you can go in and, for example, pick something quite straightforward, and it gives you a little fragment of a model, and it shows you a preview of it. And what you can do is you can also see any pub sub logging that occurs and any XHR logging. And it also shows you, it has a link to the JS doc as well. And what you can do is you can just go and change things on the fly. So if I wanted to edit this and say show menu, I can just click on the button and update the preview, and you see it reloads things there. And as I said, we've got a few examples now, and we're trying to cover more than just the JS doc. So we've got things like general information on form controls. So this takes you right down from like a simple input box to showing things with forms, and then requirement config, and then sort of validation information, and just sort of taking you through the process of this got progressive disclosure, and all of it's defined in the model associated with it. And it's really easy to add stuff, to add new pages in, and we're much less precious, if you like, about what can be contributed. Maybe you've done something and you've used something and it was maybe not as obvious as you'd hope, and you'd like to make a contribution. Then just raise a pull request with a new example page in, and then it'll go live when we do the release the following week. And we've got, as well as having sort of our basic things, we've also got things like we've got mocking. It's not tied to an Alfresco repository, so we're using a lot of the same mocking techniques as we do for the unit tests. So here we've got mocking node sort of preview things for the previewers, for for the data, and we've also got some mocking stuff for lists. So we're just sort of pulling out list data, and we're going to try and do more of this kind of stuff going forwards. But yeah, so hopefully this will be a very useful way in which people can not just sort of see a widget in action, but they can also experiment with the config as well. So hopefully that's going to be useful to people going forwards. Anything either of you want to add on the sandpit at all?
Not other than just a comment that I think the sandpit is really a great step forward, because you don't have to download or install anything. You can just start playing with Aikau directly from the browser and test out various configurations and try out widgets. I think it's a great thing, and obviously we need to increase the number of widgets and example pages in there, but that's going to build over time, as you say. So I really think it's an insanely cool tool to work with. So I'm really pleased to see this happening.
Cool. Well, yeah, and like I said, so it should get, each week there should be a few more pages added. But just to give you a kind of indication, this over here is our unit test. You can kind of see the similarity. This obviously is a full Aikau application as well. It's a standalone Aikau client. This is our unit test application, which isn't public, but you can see the difference. We've got 258 test pages compared with the sort of, what have we got over here? 8 that we've got in the sandpit. So we've got a long way to go to catch up with the the number of widgets that already exist. So the other useful resource we've got as well, which you might not know about, is we've got that JS doc which you saw embedded. But here you've got all of the widgets that exist. So if you wanted to try and pick a good one, I'm bound to pick
It would be worth mentioning the topics while we're on there.
Oh yeah, the topics is a good one. All right, so core topics. So again, we could tidy this up a little bit, but the main thing is getting the data out there. So one of the things we've tried to do is make our topics more easy to select. So this is quite a good example as well. So a few useful things in here. So we've started using this since tag, so you can see the version when something was added. So you can see that a lot of things went in version 33, 34. As you go through, you'll see it looks like we did a lot of in 33 and 34, but we're also trying to provide information about the properties that are in the that need to be provided, so you know exactly what you need to be that you need to do when you're using them. And right down at the bottom, which I think it's down at the bottom, I think it's the references. Is it down at the bottom, Martin? I'm trying to remember where you can find a link to where it's all.
To where they're used.
Yeah, so listeners, right. So here's an example. So you can see where things are listened to or fired from. So again, this is something we're working on and trying to improve. So for example, if you wanted to know where the tag query was used from, you can see that it's used by the tag service. And similarly, you can see here are the other topics that the tag service is listening to. So we're really trying to tie everything together and make the make the JS doc useful. So hopefully between a combination of the sandpit and the JS doc, you can start to get a good understanding of the configuration options and for Aikau. And of course, as well as that, there is, which I'll do one final plug for, which I haven't mentioned yet, but if you haven't done it yet, there is also, so if you go to the root page of GitHub, there's a tutorial folder in there, there's chapters, and you can go to start the contents maybe, but this is the Aikau tutorial, and this takes you through an example of building a brand new client, and it's got lots of examples of things that you can do. So it's not complete, doesn't cover everything. Obviously, it was written over a year ago now, but it does cover a lot of things, useful things like lists and renderers and stuff that are going to be commonly used. So definitely worth working through that tutorial if you haven't already. So you've got the tutorial, you've got the JS doc, and you've got the sandpit. The other nice thing about the JS doc as well is that you can actually you've got the complete source code in there as well. So if you wanted to read, actually go in and browse stuff, you can do it right from in that application. And the JS doc and the sandpit are live external websites that anyone can get to.
So we just got a question from Jones. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce his name. Urek on IRC, and he said that he got stuck on an old version of an Aikau in a project, and he would love to have the JS doc version online. Have we given any consideration to that?
It has, yeah, it has crossed my mind, but it. I haven't done any work to do that because it goes out so frequently. If you wanted to get a version of the JS doc, that's actually it shouldn't be too difficult to achieve. You could go to, if you are, I mean, obviously you've got the Git editor of your choice, but what you can do is all of our releases are tagged. So say I wanted to know exactly what the JS doc for a particular release was, I can then check out a particular branch, and if I then, this is my development environment, we have a number of grunt commands. So Martin will correct me, it's grunt docs or JS docs?
Grunt docs that all generate the documentation and launch a web server.
Yeah, so if you see this, it does take it's not too long hopefully, but you can see if I run grunt docs here, then what it'll actually do is it builds it from what I'm working on at the moment, and as Martin said, it'll actually launch a server for you to browse it. So you can very, it's not difficult to get a version, the JS doc of the version you're interested in. But hopefully as well, the use of the since tag will help people understand, when something was added. As I said, it does take a little while to run, but it will eventually pop up with a. Oh, there you go. So here, so this is. It doesn't make a lot of sense because this is just the version we are now, but it's populated a new version of the JS doc. So if I'd have checked out a different version and built that would have come up with a version specific JS docs. So hopefully that answers that question.
It might be worth just considering for the future if we could just, when we release it, just archive the old JS docs and then have them in, just append the version URL, and so by default it points to the latest one, but you could go back and find the other one. I mean, it might be worth considering. Yeah,
absolutely. It has something that's crossed my mind. I need to talk to the build guys because this is all again tied into part of the release process. That when we do the release, it does the update of the sandpit and it does the update of the JS doc. And I sort of was aware of that, that it would be an issue or people might want it. But I have to admit, it's not high on our priorities because there is a fairly easy local workaround to resolving it. But yeah, it would be good. But it just means that we're going to be building up quite an archive of data quite quickly. But I will talk to the build guys and see what they say about it.
Great.
Okay. So we covered the sandpit, the JS doc. So we're going to talk a bit about, Martin. Do you want to talk about the unit testing, or do you want me to talk about it in general, or what would you prefer?
Yeah, no, I'm happy to kind of start with it.
Okay.
So the unit testing is ultimately Selenium based. It uses it's from the same authors as Dojo, which is obviously our underlying framework. It's called Intern. It's a unit and functional testing framework, and it uses another library called Leadfoot, which is part of the same package, which is actually their Selenium implementation. It's fairly well developed, and it also gives us, so not only can we do local testing with it, but we can use Vagrant, we can use we can use Browser Stack, which we'll talk more about later. Might be able to do other ones, Docker, etc. Essentially means you can run it where you need to run it, so that you can get other environments and cross platforms.
Yeah. Shall I start? I can actually just while you're talking, I'll just actually show one of the examples. I've got the if I can run the local tests so people can see the sort of stuff that it does. While you keep talking, but this is running locally. You might want to explain the different options that we've got for testing.
Yes, well, essentially you can specify which browsers you want testing on. You can specify the suites that you want to test. While we're actively developing, we'll generally just be working on the one or two that are directly affected by by the feature we're working on, but we can run a full regression test. It takes half an hour to an hour, depending on how many browsers you're using. And you can see behind in the terminal when they're passing or failing. We've got a slightly updated reporter, they're called, that gives us information about what's going on when we use browser stack, because obviously that's running multiple browsers concurrently. So that displays it in a slightly more friendly fashion.
Can we get a clarification on what is browser stack?
Yeah, certainly. Browser stack is it's a web-based or cloud service which offers multiple VMs of different platforms, so Windows and Windows versions, Mac versions. They offer mobile devices as well, although we're not currently using them, and lots of different browsers on them, which essentially means that we can go off to them and say, right, okay, now we want to test this on, I think this is what Dave's doing now, we want to go off and test this on Internet Explorer. So this is what you can do once you're logged in. You can actually see live that they're going off and testing these, and I don't know how clearly you can see that, but on his screen there we've got 5 active VMs at the moment, and you can see we've got Firefox, Chrome, Firefox and IE, and then all the different platforms that those are actually running on. So that means we can do our cross-platform testing. So we can do 5 concurrently at the moment, but obviously there's no limit to how many we could do in total. It's just obviously only 5 at once. Yeah,
and it doesn't work brilliantly, I would say. I mean, because in terms of brilliantly when you're in this environment that I am now. So at the moment I've started the test from my local machine, and browser stack is over in the US somewhere, and it's, when you think about the journey the requests are making, so it's actually having to tunnel back into my local machine via my, my
This is the clever part of Sorry, Dave. Just to say, so the clever bit is that it does tunnel back to your local machine. So what you end up doing is testing your local web server, so your local changes via this tunnel. So you're not releasing your web server to the public, but you can still get the tunnel of communication between your server and browser stack, and so they can therefore test your live code or your development code in a live way.
Yeah. And so using it in this way, and I said it's not because of the internet issues and the fact that Google Hangouts is also particularly greedy and things like that. When we're doing it, we're moving onto our Bamboo build servers as well, and obviously those will be the performance is much better. That you sometimes get some timing errors, and we are since we've started using this, we're sort of working through a number of issues that we've found, and so this is kind of new. I mean, we're doing the automated tests since we started Aikau, but we've always been doing them against a local VM. So we've been developing against a vagrant image, which allowed us to test Chrome and Firefox, and this is now obviously opening up our testing for different environments and OSs and browsers and stuff. So it's hopefully going to make Aikau much more robust. But it's kind of cool when you're in there. I said we'll start playing around with it and being able to get these kind of results and see the tests running. But this is what it looks like when you're running locally. This is a very nice reporter that Martin's made. You can see all that. I mean, you can see the total number of tests is going to be running 11,000 tests. So it's over 2,000 tests per browser. And the other option.
Dave, are you on the same monitor?
Yeah, I am. You're not caught up.
No, sorry.
Oh, hang on. Okay. Well, we don't know what's happening. Let me. Am I not sharing the? What can you see at the moment, guys? Okay. Right. So if I go.
Takes a while to refresh.
Yeah. So it's the other option we have. I said is we can also do, if we just do grunt. So the commands I use, if you wanted to do this locally, you've got grunt test local, and that will test against the local Selenium instance, or you can do grunt test. Obviously, you need your own browser stack. What am I talking about? License to do it. If you did, you could do your own browser stack testing, or if you just do grunt test, then it does what I was talking about before, which is it runs the tests, but this time it runs them against a local vagrant image. And hopefully, again, I'm hoping that the screen share is catching up, and you can see this reporter that we've got. That you can see that it's running all the tests, and you can see, again, this is just testing two browser environments. So what's that? So 2,300 tests across the whole of Aikau, which is pretty good. And this is the way we've been relying on our testing up until now, but we are going to be switching more heavily to browser stack as we get it up and running better. But that's so I think the message is that we're working very hard on automated testing and taking it very seriously.
There is full details on GitHub of how to set up all these different environments as well, so you can do the testing in all the different ways.
Yeah, and in fact, if you're writing your unit test to go with your pull request, then you want to be working on this kind of stuff. And you obviously don't have to run all of them. If you're in your project, there's a file called suites.js, and we've left this kind of normally what we do when we're working on something is we just switch these two round, and so we can just run one test at a time. There are actually better ways of doing it in intern, but we've not. This is just the simple way we've got of doing it at the moment. So you can just run individual tests as you need to. But it's pretty good, as I said. You get, but the reason why we're trying to shift it to Bamboo and browser stack is that obviously when you're running the test, it takes an hour to run the full regression suite. But we do try and as I said, we do stay on top of our testing to make sure that each release is backwards compatible. But I will kill that for now. The other thing, did you want to say anything else about testing? I was going to show some of the coverage stuff, Martin.
No, you carry on.
Okay, all right. So the other thing we do as well is we actually collect unit test code coverage. So you can see this is we sort of don't do it every release, but we've been doing it for a little while now. Having collected the last release coverage results, but you can see again, unfortunately this isn't public. This is on an internal server behind the firewall, but again, you could, if you wanted to, you could generate this data yourself, but you can kind of see the results. It's kind of very useful for us to go in and see where we don't have good coverage. So you can see overall we're doing pretty good. We're over 80% statement coverage. You can see that the majority of them are in the green if I've just filtered on that. So it's only when you get down to the bottom, and a lot of these widgets that have got very low coverage are things that were kind of in Aikau when it got ported across, and some of them were sort of prototype-y and aren't really used that much anyway. But anything new that gets created or any bug we fix, or we make sure there's good coverage for it. So hopefully you can see again, this is a very good way of showing the progress we're making, and internally as well we publish this graph. This kind of shows where we were back at the beginning of 2014, and this is even before, so around about the beginning of 2015 was when we actually made Aikau an external project. You can see we had a big jump as we focused on the testing, and we've steadily increased. There's been a couple of blips, but you can see the progress we've made with code coverage. So again, just want to stress that it's something we're taking very seriously, and the backwards compatibility we're taking very seriously. So again, just conscious of time. Any questions come up on testing at all?
No questions or comments on testing that I've seen yet. There might be a bit of lag, but let's see. Time check. We have 27 minutes to go.
Okay. So. All right. So, as an example of some of the things, again, I mean, I've got some live examples of things we've worked on, but I wanted to show a few of the widgets or a few of the changes and things we've done. So one of the things we've done that Martin's been doing a lot of work on. Again, this unit test application is an Aikau application, so you can see this is an example of a list. It's a filtered list. So as I type in up here, it's controlling the URL that is used as part of the request. It's not filtering on the client. So I type in something and it's making a new request, and it's sort of dynamic, so I can search for drag and drop stuff. But in this case, I want to show some of the upload stuff we've been working on. So we've been when we did the original upload, it was just based on on what was in share previously, and except we tried to make it more extendable. So this is what it used. I think it's this one. So yeah, we had this example where you just do this mocked data, but it showed you had stuff in progress and stuff not working. And that's what we had for ages. But one of the things that's been going on in the background is we've been doing a lot of UX research. Not us, there's a separate team. And as the output of that, we're sort of trying to improve things. So one thing we've been working on is this new upload upload widget or a new way of displaying uploads. It was a similar kind of thing. So this is the unit test page for it. So if I trigger the uploader there, hopefully you can see that it's a slightly different approach. This simulates as though you were dragging and dropping into the page, but you've got a much nicer rendering here, and you can sort of minimize it. It's much more like other, I won't mention any names, but examples you might see on other products, but you can sort of close it. And this again, the whole what do we call it? This is the sticky panel, isn't it, Martin? This doesn't have to be used for upload. It could be have whatever you want in it. It's kind of like a notification. It's controlled, in fact, by the notification service. But in this case, we've got an upload monitor that's being rendered in it. And this is still work in progress, but it's coming along quite nicely. But as an example of the sort of iterative work we do on widgets. Anything, Martin, you'd like to? I know you've done a lot of work on this, so.
No, not particularly. I think it's all visual, most of the work I've done, so if you can see it, then it's probably covered it. So.
Okay, cool. So there's that one, which I think is worth mentioning. There's a couple of others I thought might be useful as well. So lists, which you might have seen here. So one of the things we changed recently is we wanted to change the way in which list data is rendered. So let me just... it's because there aren't more than stupid. This I was wondering why I wasn't showing any more results. If I change the number of results per page here, this also works quite well. So what we wanted to do was improve the display. So what used to happen is it used to paginate, like change the number of results or something like that. That it would remove all of the data and then it would flicker as it came back in. But what we've got now, and it's kind of because it's quick, unfortunately, even though with a number of results, you can see what it's doing is it loads another instance, and we've got this little lozenge, as some people have been calling it, that appears showing you've got something loading in the background. And so it was another one of these examples where we took a widget that already existed, but we re-implemented it, and we can do this kind of thing because in terms of backwards compatibility, because what we do is we honor the configuration and the behavior, and we also use annotation. We annotate some of the functions to say they're safe for extension or override and things like that. And so we were able to change some of the implementation safely in a backwards compatible way. So if you were to go up to the latest Aikau, you'd see some of this behavior coming in with things like the sites manager and anywhere basically where there's lists. So that's some work we've been doing in that area. What were some of the other ones? So another good one. Actually, I'll show you this one in the sandpit, because this one is in the sandpit. So this one's been around for a little while, but I think it's another good example of some of the work we've done. So this is it's like a multi-select type thing. Again, this is another one that Martin's done a lot of work on. Well, I say a lot, he's done the whole thing. But it's, as you might expect, you can sort of do, you can add things and take them away, and it's sort of keyboard accessible, so I can do this with a keyboard, and again, it's quite a nice little widget for multi-select actions, and you've got options. This is simulating retrieving data from a REST API, and this one is actually using an example of fixed data. But again, quite a nice little widget that we've added in, and it adheres to all of the same form control. It inherits the same form control behavior as all the other form controls.
Might be worth mentioning that the reason we've done these widgets is generally because somebody has asked us for them.
Yes.
And it doesn't have to be a fully detailed thing. I think this one came in as we'd like something that looks like this, and essentially we took the theme and the behavior from the control that they'd found on the internet and implemented it. And it slots into the base form control, so you can use it in one of our forms seamlessly. The validation works automatically, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
so
that's a good point. I didn't really say that when we were talking about the process. I mean, the Aikau team is what we describe as a component team. So there are a number of feature teams that are consuming Aikau. This came up on IRC. Someone asked, well, what's using Aikau? I think that was their words. It might have been slightly more, not quite like that, but so we've got RM that's using it. There's a project. There's a Salesforce integration project which is using the new version of the document library. There's other projects which I'm not really allowed to talk about that are using it. the custom or the model manager that was in 5.1, that's using it as well. Obviously things like the header, the faceted search, sites manager, all of these things are using it. So what will happen is a feature team will need something. They might need, for example, they need this kind of form control and it didn't exist, and then we'll get the requirement, we'll implement it, turn it around in our sprint, and then it's there for them to consume going forward. So that's basically how the interaction works between teams. So we just basically respond to requests that come in from feature teams. And as we said, this is exactly just like as you'd expect a form control. The other one what was the other one we did that was quite useful and a similar thing? It was the I can never remember its name. The one we did for RM recently, Martin, which was the
push button, was it?
Oh yeah, push button. That was another interesting one. So again, there was a very specific from the UX research they did. There was a very specific way in which they wanted users to be able to select options very quickly. So we had this approach so where you can just go in and select data, and so again it works on the pub sub model. So you can when you click on this button here, it's publishing a request. Might be worth, again, I might mention here, a very powerful tool is the pub sub log. So what you can do here is this shows you all the publication subscription activity that's going on, and you can do things like, so I can exclude things from the results, and I can include other things from the results, and I can filter out so you just see publications or just see subscriptions. I can clear the data. But this is what we use as part of our testing, but it's also a very good debugging tool, and you will see it. So if I was in, I'm going to jumping all over the shop. If in share, you can actually go straight to click on this and see the pub sub log running within it in share if you're running in client debug mode. So again, just examples of things we've been working on. So we are very, as I said, very responsive to the needs of other teams. And what were the other one? I just wanted to show a couple of the other ones. Oh yeah, another one that was quite interesting that came in as an example of us being, because Martin said earlier that Dojo is our core library, which it is, in the sense that we do a lot of the widgets. We use the require stuff that comes from Dojo for the AMD behavior, and we also use it for the sort of boilerplate for declaring widgets. But we also want to do Markdown. We wanted to have an idea of doing some Markdown stuff. So this was an example where we just were able to take a third-party JavaScript library. I can't remember which one I used in the end, but we were able just to go in and just grab a so it's the kind of standard sort of thing here. And it renders some Markdown, but we didn't really have to do a lot of effort with this. We were just able to, take third-party libraries, and we do this a lot. So Aikau, I know I say this all the time, but Aikau isn't Dojo specific. It's not a Dojo only framework. It's not a wrapper around Dojo. We use jQuery. We've used all sorts of other libraries, TinyMCE, CodeMirror. We've used whatever Markdown editor this one was, which I forgot the name of now. I was doing some experimenting with Gridster. So
if it's require JS AMD, you can use it very easily.
Well,
and if not, then you can still wrap it and use it. So
that's right. Yeah. So it's a good point. So we aren't, again, we're not even tied to using the AMD stuff. So we have other examples like TinyMCE. I think the reason why we didn't use it, I was hijacking the require function. So we just basically did an old-fashioned kind of import. This is non-AMD dependencies that you can use. But the idea is what we're trying to do with Aikau, the real message is we're trying to encapsulate other frameworks, basically pick whatever we want and put a wrapper around it. And it gives us the number of options. It protects us from changes. We can go in and re-implement things, or we can take advantage of ES6 features when we have to stop supporting IE8 and things like that, and we can just take work that other people have done and provide it to the community in a very safe and consumable way. Any other comments on any of that at all?
Not on that directly. There was a question from IC about have we having any plans about doing an in-depth tutorial about testing stuff like using mock service to provide mock data.
We didn't have any plans previously, but we do now.
Yeah, we would. Again, it's one of those things. I have said I would love a bigger team, We would love to do more of this. We'd love dedicated docs resources to write these kind of tutorials. We're under as you might imagine, there's a lot of pressure for us to deliver for the feature teams, and we've also got this bugs first policy, which means we don't carry any technical debt. If we get to a sprint where we've got a lot of slack, or we've got any slack, then we might look to do that. There is some information on setting up the test framework. There isn't a lot of information on how to write tests, but it's kind of boilerplate, really. I can kind of show you the kind of examples. Basically, for each test page is a web script. So if we wanted to find, say, for example, what was I going to look at if I just did a thumbnail test, for example? So as you can imagine, you've got thumbnail dot. I've got to make sure it's the test app and not the sandpit one. So we have a web script, which, I'm sure you know, has got a descriptor. So you've got thumbnail, and we put them in the family, the Aikau unit test family, so that it shows up in the main index. The HTML free marker page is just boilerplate. And then we have a standard Aikau model. We just define whatever we need. This wasn't a good example for mocking, I don't think, unless maybe I've got some of the...
There's an upload mock. That might be...
Oh, yeah, well, this one's got the thumbnails mock, because this has to return the previews. And then having done that, you just add a thumbnail test script, and it's promise-based, so hopefully people are kind of familiar with that. But effectively, up to the start, from this line down to this line, is all boilerplate, and from this line to this line is boilerplate. And all you do really is declare the name of your tests. And for each test is very simple. You're just finding something. It's again using the Leadfoot APIs, which is a wrapper around Selenium. You find, you test the behavior you want to see running. So it's not, you could use what we've done as an example. And we ourselves have got better at doing things, and we've got these sort of helpful helper functions like get, last, publish, things like that for checking data that's in the pub/sub log, because a lot of this stuff is pub/sub driven. But I'd love to write a tutorial, and if there's demand for it, we'll try and find the time, and we'll create an issue and put it on our backlog for doing that, and we'll try and get to it as soon as we can.
I think it would definitely be worth taking this into account, considering that you guys are one of the best teams at accepting contributions. So having a clear description on how you work with the testing framework, and how you develop a test, and how you mock the data and everything, that's essential for getting quality pull requests, I'd say. So
yeah,
definitely be bumped a bit up in priority.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll definitely make that a requirement. I won't show any more of these things. There were a few others I was going to say. We had sort of customer stuff I was going to show to show that we've been feeding back, and also community things. We are trying to turn around requests from the community, but I know there was some stuff that you really wanted me to get onto. Okay, so
I just got a comment that you've been circling around the document library progress. I think everyone wants to hear more about
that's
that one.
that's kind of okay. That's what I was going to go. I was going to tie this in with a few things. So, one of the questions that you said you wanted to see was about site pages. So I'll show this one. I'll tie the two things in together. So the site page. Oh, I've been chatting so much I've timed out. So if I go into here, share config. So for people who aren't familiar, there are a list of site pages which you can find in your share config. You don't have to edit this directly. You can put it as an extension. And there is, by the way, I should say, if you Google for it, there's a blog post I did which describes the whole thing. How you can do site pages, but in this particular example, what I've done, you have to do two things. You have to add the site page you want, and then you have to actually create a page definition. The reason why is it needs to get hold of this title and description, and then you can go and you can sort of take something. So I can take the Aikau. This, you can see I've added the Aikau document library, and then it will add it in. If I go to more, it'll be there, and then you can actually go and see the document library for the page. So, and this is an example of it just running on the same thing without the header and footer at the moment. So the general gist of it is that there is a feature team or being assembled to put this into the product at some point. I don't know when it will end up. maybe 5.2, maybe 5.3, and obviously we're going to be doing share releases more frequently than we used to. So when I say 5.2 or 5.3, that hopefully won't mean a year between them. I'm not a product manager, I can't speak for releases, but that's the theory anyway. And also, as I said, we have other teams that are already using them. The Salesforce integration team, for example, have been using the document library. And in most senses, it's kind of there. The thing we're missing is action support and some styling, but you can do things that you do some neat things that you couldn't do before. So, for example, you can do inline edit on anything. Not just on the title. You can also do inline commenting, which is quite nice. Oops. So you can see I can do inline editing on a thing. I can do inline previewing if I want to. But it actually that is a video file. There we go. So I can do inline previewing. So we can do a lot more in the app than you used to be able to do. The other thing that's quite nice, let me see a very bad example, but I could, so if I wanted to do, let me upload a jar file. I think it's the old uploader that's still on this one. So there we go, that's the uploader. But what I can also do is I can do upload new version. I think that's going to work. So I can do an update, which is quite a nice feature. Obviously that was actually the same file, but you get the idea that I can actually do an and hopefully I didn't test this, hopefully that's going to work. Haven't been playing with this for a while. There you go. So bad doing stuff live. It's always a mistake. So that one didn't work. Has been working. It's not product yet, but yeah. So and you can do your navigation and your filtering and all the usual stuff that you can. So it's sort of ongoing. There isn't, as I said, the Aikau team is a component team, not a feature team. So it's really down to when the product managers decide that they want to do something with this. And get it out there, but there does seem to be more of a will to be working on it. But it's like I said, it's not far away. You've got the different views. If it's you've got the film strip view as well. So that's kind of where we are. I can't really give a lot more information, other than that. That's just the general state of of progress. But on a related note to that one, we've also got other things. We've got standalone clients that do interesting things with the document library. This is just something. This is my own personal GitHub library that I was playing around with. So you've got things like I'm the admin, so my files is company home. But you can also do things like go and you can do this kind of thing. You can have lots of sites in the same. Being opened in tabs and things like that. So that's a little client that's on GitHub that you can download and play around with. I'm going to have no time at all to talk about my favorite app that I did, because I'm so conscious of the time now. I will talk about the other thing that you asked me to bring up, which was about share header customization. So in the share web scripts, so module deployment. So I've got an extension module that I've added in here, which I can show you, which is this header customizations. So the question that people ask, and it does come up a lot, is how can I make sure that I customize things and they stay between all Aikau pages and non-Aikau pages. So for those of you who've noticed, I've got shared files is missing, and my files now says user home, and that's done via an extension, and it's the same across. So this is what you call a standard, an old style page, and if I were to go to search, so if I were to search for something, then you'll see that it's the same in both cases, and the question comes up: how can I, people either say it works for one and not both, and there's a sort of trick, if you like, to being able to do this. So while I haven't loaded the search page, so it's doing the dependency analysis the first time, I will wait for it to come up while so there it is. So again, I want a full Aikau page, which you can tell by the dp/ws. And again, the same extension has been persisted. So if I just expand this so you can see what's going on. So here's my extension. So take a note of the path. So Alfresco site web scripts, that's the location where web scripts can be loaded from. Org Alfresco share pages, customization share, header, and this is the actual file itself. So what I'm doing is I'm renaming the header files menu item, and I'm deleting the shared files one. And then the other part of it is actually picking this up. So you've got site data extensions, and in the extension calendar, so this is effectively the key bit here. So normally what you have is this is basically picking up customizations for standard the standard components. So on a normal page, the header, if I go back, hopefully I'm not jumping around too much, the normal header over like on the home page is just a surf component, whereas on the Aikau page, the whole page is one web script. And so what you need to do is you need to add in this two customization statements to cover it. Now the first one is basically picking up, saying for any org Alfresco, anything under org Alfresco, you want to map the same file, in this case the share header.get, to the customization path. So that takes care of everything that's non-Aikau. And for things that are Aikau pages, you use this always apply. So what this is doing is it's making an extension to the faceted search, which is this page, facetedsearch.get.js. It's making an extension to that, but it's actually looking for the same. It's slightly fuller because I have to put the complete path in, but I say right, always apply, and again you just imagine that's the shareheader.get.js because they're always .get.js for the components. So it's saying always apply that, and you can add as many of those as you want. Now this, and I appreciate I've covered that quite quickly because we're running out of time, but again there is a blog post I've done previously on this. Actually, no, it wasn't a blog post. If you search on the forums, someone asking the question, and I put the answer in on the forums, and also I added somewhere else down here, I've put a link onto a comment on a blog post, which is what I was just looking at here, and there is a jar that you can download, which is effectively what I did for this demo, which was why I've basically removed the sample stuff, which was just to delete items for a particular user. But yeah, so there is information on the web about how to do it. If you just search for Alfresco Aikau always apply, then you'll basically end up here. But that's the answer to that question.
Just got a comment saying that maybe it'd be worth just to write it up in a blog post.
Yeah.
So once and for all, explaining it with the sample.
Okay, I will endeavour to find the time to do that. What else was I going to cover in 3 minutes? I'm not sure I've got any more time to cover stuff.
So if you want to show off the Horizon 3 application, I know that's one of the cool things you've been working on. So we can give you 5 minutes and then wrap it all up. So.
Oh, okay, all right. So it probably won't work now. I've been doing this. So so we got some time to do. The only reason you're saying that is because I'll plug the SDK. So we got given very generously got given a week to sort of do some innovation, and the thing I did was I wrote again another Aikau client called Horizon 3, and the idea, again, this might be something that people have wondered, what's happened to the page creation stuff. So the idea is this, again, another standalone client. This is using the SDK, which I will say is awesome for doing this kind of stuff, and what you can do, again, this is all on GitHub if you want to check it out and build it and try it out. Similar kind of stuff you might have seen me talk about before. In the repository, we've now got a couple of extra folders. In the data dictionary, we have a share resources folder which contains application types and pages, and then we've got an applications folder. And it's just a way of being able to build stuff dynamically, but it's building on the kind of stuff you might have seen me show at Alfresco summits in the past. So I can go to the I'm just not going to have enough time to do a decent enough demo, but the idea is you can go and say, all right, I want to add a page, and the thing we've worked on now is basically to expose fragments as templates. I'll do the same sort of example as quickly as I can of what we've done before. When it comes up, again, dependency analysis on first page load is always a pain. Okay. Here it comes. So the idea is what you can do is you've kind of seen this stuff before, but if I go and add some layout stuff, what I can do is if I take a window, and I can configure it as you might have seen. So we'll just say default outer. I don't want to hide the title, and say OK to that, and we'll put a window in a window, and I'll put inner. Oh, sorry, let's change this because it makes sense. We can say default inner. I don't want to hide the title, and then if I were to preview this, you get, as you might expect, a window within a window, which is these things. But then what I can do is I can expose parts of it. I can go and say, right, I want to expose an element, so I can say the title of this I want to make the outer title. You see, I've done this before just to check. And I can put a description. I won't put the description in. So I can save that one, and then I can, in here, in the inner one, I'm going to expose the, again, all built with Aikau in case you were wondering. I can expose the inner title, and also I can expose the widgets that you can put in it. So inner widgets. So what I can then do is, if I call this call that Windows, which is a funny name to give it, save that. And having saved it, which you'll see here, I'm going to go and add another page very, very quickly. And this time I'm going to take, you see, this is the actual fragment I just created called Windows. And when I drop it in here, you can see that I've got inner widgets, which is what I called the drop zone of the inner widgets. And when I edit it, you can see I've now got, I've exposed elements. Now this is kind of like a really trivial example. If I preview here, you can see, oh, is it not? It's not picked it up. Maybe I'm not. Oh, it's nothing in it. I'm going very fast. Let's put something in here. Just check this is going to work. Got a few things that are in here. Typos. Let's change that. So hopefully I've done that right. And then if I save this, let's call this app 1. Hopefully this is going to be a really naff demo if I go to all this trouble and it doesn't work. I've got here's one I did earlier, but then you can basically create a template for an application. So if I said this was going to be app 1, and I was going to use the app 1 template, and then I was going to go and create an application instance, let's call this application, and I wanted to use app 1. I could do group restriction, but I won't. And then you go back to the main page, you've got the application. Hopefully this is going to work. So hard to hear the round of applause on a Hangout, but what you can hopefully kind of see there, that I built a reusable fragment, and I was able to expose configuration attributes from within that model, and I was able to put things in them. I know it looks like a really trivial example, but hopefully going forwards, this would be a good way of, imagine a user was trying to build their own view of data. That would be a very good example, or being able to build anything really. Just being able to drag and drop things together, and again, it's because of the way that Aikau works and it all being declarative. Then you can sort of, hopefully the world is going to be your oyster. But again, this was something I put together in just a few days, and I think it's pretty cool. But there we go.
Looks really, really awesome. I must say that I'm impressed by. I mean, from this, I've seen the demo before and I know a bit more about it. But and I know the demo is really quick because we're short on time. But essentially, this allows you to create templates and allow power users to create specialized views. Or even if we made a document library that had all the proper things exposed, we could actually have power users customize the document library with drag and drop and all these kind of things. It's a really cool feature, and I'm hoping to see more of this in the future. Maybe we should do a proper feature video on it and put that on YouTube just to let people know how this works and what it is. And again, it ties back to the page creator. The question is whether or not this is available publicly, and I believe you said it was on your.
Yeah. So if you want to go and find it, then if you go to GitHub and you find this terrible picture of me that I really think, which I really think I should change. It's called Horizon 3, and I think Horizon 3 is the SDK. No, that's the client. There's an SDK app as well. Hang on, a popular. That's all of them. Okay, so yeah, so Horizon 3 Repo AMP is the SDK project, which is, as I said, if you haven't used the SDK, you definitely should. It's very cool. And Horizon 3 is the client, and it's dead easy just to clone those and build them and have a play with them. and I'm not really doing any more work with them at the moment. But it's it's all just there. It's all public. You can take a look. There's a few other clients and things that I muck about with. As I said, I really should change my GitHub profile picture.
And again, this ties back to the previous page creator that we used to have in Aikau, and I believe it's still there, but it's kind of broken, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, when we did the custom, the model management stuff, we basically rewrote all the drag and drop stuff. I mean, the drag and drop framework now is completely open-ended, so you can model any data you want with it, and that's really what we changed. And so the old widgets don't work anymore, but there is a whole drag and drop library for being able to build, and like I said, model any data you want.
Great. So we are 5 minutes past, and we better wrap this up. Thank you two for joining today. It was a really good update, some good questions, and I'm really excited to see all these new features in it. And again, remember everyone that Aikau is on GitHub, so feel free to raise pull requests or issues and whatnot. They have a bug first mentality. I hope that's really clear now to everyone that bugs are being prioritized, even though they come from community. And with that, I will just add that Richard just posted the release notes for 5.1 Community Edition release, GA release. So that is out. Be sure to check it out. And I think that's it. Thank you so much for attending today, and I'll see you guys in a few weeks.
Cool. Thanks.